if anymore, it's a matter of when. Yes, let's start from there.
For me, it appears that he actually cooked his own goose by what he has done. And outside the accusations, as are covered by Chris Tairu,
yeah.
I'm not sure following the path of the properties he has acquired would make a lot of sense. Because last evening he defended himself. He said some are actually leases. It's not an outright purchase. And then maybe some of the properties could be maybe inherited from his late brother. And some of the properties are in fact owned by his children. However, again, that brings into question the importance of wealth declaration. So maybe what we need to establish is when he became the deputy president, we should be given the value of his assets and the value of his assets today. And then he should be able to demonstrate how he has grown his wealth over the last 2 years for those allegations to stand. But I think the broader picture is, it seems to me that DP Gachagua did not socialize with Article 147, which describes who a vice president is. Because, sorry, a deputy president. A deputy president is supposed to be the principal assistant to the president, and you're supposed to give the president solid and wise counsel. That is your responsibility. But his behavior over the last 2 years, one cannot fail to form the impression that he actually believed he was a co-president. And you remember he spoke about shareholding. So he believed he had a 50% shareholding, while President Ruto had 50% shareholding, and he considered himself a co-president. And the moment you do that, then things start going south. Number two, he lacked strategic political patience, and that is something anybody who wants to succeed as a vice president or a deputy must have. And we can go to the US and pick some examples. For instance, when there was the most consequential presidential debate in the US, and Joe Biden is said to have done a horrible job. At some stage he was incorrect. There was a vice president called Atiku Abubakar during the time of President Obasanjo. Atiku Abubakar behaved in a manner similar to DP Gachagua. And President Obasanjo said, you want to become president, it's going to be a challenge for you. Now, Atiku Abubakar has been running for Nigeria's president for 7 terms because he did not have that strategic political patience. But one would argue that President Ruto did the same thing. But you recall, President Ruto faced similar tribulations, but he remained loyal for 9 years. It's only on the 10th year that he actually came out when he started campaigning for the presidency.
Was it the 10th year?
I mean, yeah, when he declared that he's now running for president, you remember that is when the Tanga-Tanga debate came up, and he said, I'm embracing Tanga-Tanga. But even when the president said Tanga-Tanga in a derogatory way, for the deputy president, then Ruto, he said, I'm actually moving from point A to point B, trying to establish all the mandeleos that we are doing. So, and also you remember that one of the principal responsibilities of a deputy president is to highlight and defend government policies. The deputy president has not been highlighting government policies, and the deputy president has not been defending government policies. In fact, he contradicts the cabinet position. He contradicts the president at every turn. But in my view, the elephant in the room, and that is something, as far as I'm concerned, is very critical. When you are elected, or rather, when you are the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya, you can no longer wear your tribal colors. But as soon as he became the deputy president, he still retained his tribal colors. So now we have somebody who occupies a leadership position, national leadership position, still, putting on tribal colors. And for lack of a better word, you've got a tribal chief masquerading as a national leader. Now, then he talks about my people. So when he's in Mount Kenya, he talks about my people. How does that make Mora feel? Mora, who is in Mosocho, And then the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya is talking about my people with specific reference to Mount Kenya. How does Alima feel in the coast when the Deputy President is talking about my people with specific reference to Mount Kenya? Then, you have to look at the national cohesion. There's even a commission in Kenya around national cohesion and integration. What does that do? The presidency is a symbol of national unity. You cannot be a symbol of national unity when you are not loyal to Kenya's national and public interest, when you are loyal to tribal interest. In my view, I think that is a critical thing that we need to evaluate.
Okay, and we'll get deeper into some of the issues that you've mentioned, but you equally said we need to announce the wealth of the Deputy President. Remember, during the presidential debate, he did mention that his net worth is around 800 million. So there you have it. I've answered. But before we come to Osido,
but from the way Theru was captured, those assets, it appears to me that it's about 10 billion. So it would be very interesting to establish 0.8 million to about 10 billion. That curve is
in 2
amazing.
years.
Yeah, that curve is amazing. And in 2 years, when the economy in Kenya is generally bleeding, when there's nobody dancing to the bank, and if he's able to achieve that kind of astronomical growth, and is the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, how come the same skills he's using for his personal growth are not reflected in the growth of the Kenyan economy? Those will be pertinent questions at some stage.
Okay, all right. Osido, before you respond, because I know you want to respond to that, allow me to just bring in Bichachi. Bichachi, good morning. I hope you're okay. Do you agree with, Dismas that the Deputy President cooked his own goose? All right, we seem to be having a problem with the sound there. But coming to you, Osido, there is a saying that those who cannot learn from history are doomed to repeat it. We find ourselves in a similar position that we were in a previous administration.
Yeah.
Is that a good trend as a country?
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Actually, it is not a good trend. And it is not a good trend because if you look at the manner in which we manage our transitions, especially as a country, there are transitions that are not largely built on very solid foundations. There are transitions that are not built on a transition that is unshakable. Now, and this is because a lot of the things that we do are largely political. And even if you look at the manner in which we undertake our political inclinations and also mobilizations, it is largely based on who you are in terms of your ethnic community and how many votes in terms of your ethnic community members you can be able to mobilize and bring to the table. And if you listen to some of the accusations that have been levied against the Deputy President, none of those is getting us to where the point is.
Because what is the point?
The point is in the sense of our mobilization to gain political power. They are not saying that we are accusing you because you went to Mount Kenya and you said that the Kikuyus must have a greater share in government and all that. They are going to, his property, this and all that. But yet, the main point is, how do we build this thing we are calling a government? The IEBC expects you that, for instance, when you are running for office as a president, you present a pair. So it's a president and a deputy president. Actually, there's a process towards agreeing on who becomes your deputy president. And I think that for Kenya Kwanza and President William Ruto and his deputy, we already saw that shaky groundness from the onset, especially in the manner in which Kenyans were kept waiting for a deputy president to be named. And you realize that even as we speak right now, there are very many names that we are still being told should have been deputy president and not you. Now, that already presents a problem because it shows Kenyans that, one, you have options and that you can be able to use your options in the sense and in the manner that you want. And the president has also been quite categorical, and he said that even for me in 2027, I don't see myself coming to Mount Kenya because I am looking for a female running mate. And you can be able to see the kind of political calculations that are ongoing are those that are actually leading us towards not necessarily the next generation in terms of building a government that can respond to the needs of the people, but is purely leading towards the next election. So everything we are doing, including the conversations around impeaching the deputy president, whether successful or not, you'll be able to see, but they are largely built on what you have and who you are, based on political satisfaction, not based on how much you're able to arrive at responses to the needs of the Kenyan people. And so for me, these conversations around the impeachment are largely between the president and his deputy. How they locked themselves in a room and agreed that actually it is not going to be Professor Kithure Kindiki, it is not going to be Ndindi Nyoro, it is not going to be so-and-so, it is going to be you, Rigathi Gachagua. The people who are in that room, and we have heard very many stories in the last few days about how this agreement was arrived at. The same manner in which that agreement was arrived at, they need to get back to that level and solidify their foundation. And I'm quite impressed by the president because we have not heard him speaking about this issue. And that to me is quite telling because our president is someone who doesn't hide his ideas. He doesn't hide what he wants to say. He shows his anger very overtly and he expresses himself. But the kind of silence that he has treated these impeachment conversations and concerns of his deputy, I think should be sending a certain, some sense of non-spoken answers to what we are probably grappling with. And so it needs to be handled within the two of them, and that the Kenyan people should be given what they asked for, which is pure services, and that those services need to be services that respond to the needs of the people, because Kenya Kwanza has not done very well, actually. We were with you here on the day when President William Ruto was 2 years old, and we scored him at a D-. Kenya Kwanza needs to begin to think through how can we be able to build our legacy to respond to the political questions. Because if you get it politically, if you get it right towards service delivery, you will automatically get it right towards political satisfaction, which means that Kenyans will say, yeah, we elected Dismas, and he's been able to deliver the things that he said he was going to deliver. Okay. As it is right now, we are being treated to so many things that I think are more or less trying to cover a lot of unhidden, questions which Kenyans are seeking to get answers for by a lot of drama, propaganda, and narrative. So, of course, the Constitution envisioned in Article 150, actually, that a deputy president would be impeached, or there could be instances when a deputy president, just like a president in Article 144 and 145, could be impeached. But Kenyans are not there. We are not yet there in terms of the impeachment process. So it is the political class that needs to do their thing at the National Assembly and at the Senate. For the sake of the Kenyan people, the president and his deputy should be able to provide that ample environment to also be able to provide stability for the economy that Kenyans are grappling with, for the investors that are asking for that political stable environment to be able to gain confidence that their businesses are safe. Because Kenya, politically speaking, any single spark already sends a lot of shivers, which therefore destabilize very many things. And already we can see the degree of stability, that when campaigns are going on, even shops are closed. People cannot travel because you don't know what will happen in Nakuru. Any spark, roads will be blocked. I don't think that Kenyans are looking for that. So impeachment processes, no impeachment processes, the political class needs to give Kenyans not necessarily a break, but because they are politicians, but to think through how that plays towards the responses to the answers that Kenyans are looking for.
All right, Dismas, before we go back to Bichachi, you talked about the issue of masquerading as a tribal chief. Here, Osido
as a national leader.
And just Osido just mentioned the fact that they were a package deal. They knew what kind of man he is, but they still chose him.
There's a saying, I think it's a Victorian saying, that if you want to know a man, and I don't know why they did not say if you want to know a woman, that if you want to know a man, give them money and give them power.
Yeah.
Maybe when they were cutting these deals about who is going to be the running mate, one of the parties did not have power, so nobody would know their true colors. And I beg to take a departure from what Mr. Osido has elaborated, that it should concern all Kenyans that there is an impeachment process. And it should concern all Kenyans on the grounds of the impeachment process. Because you've got the presidency as a symbol of national unity. So if the president is pulling in direction A and the deputy is pulling in direction B, that is a recipe for political instability. For instance, this morning, so this morning we should be discussing on how to promote Kenya as an FDI destination how to take Kenya's talents to Canada and Germany, and how to get new markets for Kenyan coffee and tea abroad.
How to create jobs.
How to create jobs.
Because Kenyans don't want jobs abroad.
Yeah.
No, of course, others want the jobs abroad.
Yes.
But right now, we are discussing impeachment. Now, the deputy president has spent the last several weeks holding courts with journalists discussing his impeachment. You know, the deputy president was given the responsibility of presiding over reforms in the coffee sector, tea and milk. So he's not been discussing those reforms. He's been discussing his impeachment. Your members of the National Assembly and Senate, for the last 3 weeks, they've been preparing for this impeachment process. Instead of offering, critical services, legislation.
So we are actually in agreement.
So we are doing this. No, I'm saying that's why it should concern. You know, like for instance, one of the responsibilities, unlike President Kenyatta, who did not give the deputy any responsibilities, President Ruto told the deputy president, because I don't want you to tanga all over Kenya, you are going to chair the cabinet committees.
But he has, hasn't he?
I am coming to that point. Then he told him you're going to be responsible for coffee, tea, and milk.
They've even had a conference for coffee.
Yeah, the PS for livestock has been doing very well on issues of commercialization of livestock. So one would have expected that, in fact, the deputy president will use his political capital to invigorate that process. But instead of invigorating that process, instead of pushing it, he's holding news conferences in his mother tongue, discussing his impeachment. So the Reverend Mora or Alima or another person
Yes.
who wants to listen to this conversation cannot understand what the president is talking about.
You see,
Yeah, okay.
actually, why this war is not for Kenyans, like the citizens, and you realize that Dismas is actually agreeing with what I said.
Yes.
That we now need to move towards delivering those services that Kenya Kwanza promised. And that if there are conflicts in the political space or networks or connotations in a manner in which the politicians are uncomfortable, they don't have to get back to Kenyans. We already elected you to go into office. And that the next time you come back to us is after 5 years. And then you come and tell us what you have done. And if we are comfortable with it, we give you another opportunity.
But Kevin, nobody has asked you to vote. Nobody has asked you to vote.
But
in the
that's what you're
impeachment.
asking Kenyans.
Gentlemen,
Because
come on.
no Kenyan, by the way, other than the elected officials, and that's why I said this thing is about the political class,
Yes.
the National Assembly and the Senate. They're the ones who will vote. The people that they are seeking to drum up through these media conversations, that local radio station, they are not going to vote. They want you to be telling them, what have you done to deliver on the services that you promised us?
Okay.
All this is hogwash and quite a waste of time to do.
All right, let me just give Bichachi a chance to, weigh in his options. Bichachi, I hope right now we're good and you can hear me. 2 years into the administration and, of course, talks of a divorce already.
Well, one of the things that I think Kenyans have is very short memories for the history of this country. Let's remember that Rigathi Gachagua was once upon a time a prime suspect and indeed taken to court on issues of corruption. So a tiger does not change its stripes. So in as much as we want to absolve the Kenyan community, we voted in Rigathi Gachagua knowing exactly that he has been suspected of the very same corruption that Parliament is proclaiming that he has done. Number two, I think the process of impeachment in this country, whereas sometimes we've seen it to have been abused, but let us remember that it purged the county of Kiambu of one Babayao and his company. We remember that he was able to make billions of shillings with a company that only had 3 people in it, Mama Yao, Babayao, and Yao, and that is not how Kenya should work. Whereas we've got bankers, we've got Kenyans who are working supremely hard to ensure that they make a buck every day. We see public officials who are able to balkanize a lot of resources in a short time. So in the fight against corruption, I've always said, and I think I first said it on this very platform, KTN News, and I'll repeat it again, that let the broom sweep, whether it starts at the corner called Rigathi Gachagua or at another corner, let it sweep and let it sweep clean, because corruption is one of the things that leads to mismanagement, one of the things that leads to bad governance in our country. Now, as it comes to the relationship between the president, the deputy, and various cabinet secretaries, we must understand that the presidency must be respected. Now, be respected by who is the critical question. The answer is this: it must first be respected by those who hold that particular office. Rigathi Gachagua, unfortunately for himself, started off on a very, very wrong foot when, of course, we remember his remarks around shareholding. That was not presidential at all. His remarks about setting Mitego around State House, not presidential at all. His remarks referring to himself primarily as of only the mountain. You cannot be in the presidency, and by the presidency I'm including him and the president, because that's what it is. You cannot be in the presidency and then purport to basically lean your weight and your political might on just one part of the country. Now, when it comes to breaking the constitution, these are very serious matters that need to be addressed. So, whereas we understand that the presidency should stay together and things like that, I am convinced, given the evidence that is being given, that he does have a case to answer, and that is an impeachable case. Now, having said that, there is an issue in this country when it comes to the issue of deputies, whether you're talking about them in governance, you're talking about them in governors, or you're talking about them in the presidency, in that since their role is not constitutionally held, they become busybodies, and those busybodies become empty debba's, making a lot of noise that is unnecessary. These deputies, we need to look at our constitution and we need to give them roles, and perhaps even copy from the United States, where we make them presidents of the Senate or speakers of the Senate, to use the Kenyan term, so that they're able to be occupied. The problem here is also these guys have become so unbusy that they are able to acquire 5-10 hotels in a short time instead of working, because doing those transactions is not easy. Whether you are leasing or they are owned by your son, one wonders where your son got such money. But the truth of the matter is, I am glad this is happening. It is setting a precedent in this country. It is saying no to corruption. I unfortunately do not feel sad for Rigiji, because now he understands how it feels like not to be a shareholder. Next time, he'll be more careful not to call Kenyans non-shareholders.
Okay.
I think one of the issues that Bichachi has raised,
yes,
the issue of shareholding. Yesterday, he defended himself and he said that when he spoke about shareholding, he meant the government, not the distribution of national resources. But now one may want to ask, now that we have got Rigiji Incorporated, how many Kenyans, in fact, want to buy shareholders? I don't know that, Kevin, you want to buy shares in Rigiji Incorporated, whether you think it's a good stock. And also, Bichachi has raised another fundamental issue, that right from the word go, when Deputy President was being inaugurated, you recall he had challenges reading his oath of office. Maybe we would say it was excitement, maybe it was high energy. But his speech on that particular day, he knows he's addressing an international audience, then he decides to wash Kenya's linen in public. You know, he made some utterances, then rational men would ask themselves, wait a minute, does he not know that we've got about 50 heads of state here? Why is he washing our dirty linen in public? And then this idea of every single day talking about Watu wa Mulima, that we are truthful people, one has to ask the question, he says the truthful man, is he actually truthful? When he says he's a truthful man, is he actually truthful? That is the question we must ask.
You see, Ashley.
Yes, and even as you respond,
yeah.
You know, Bichachi mentioned that this impeachment process is being abused. As you respond, also respond to that.
I don't think there is any abuse, and that's why initially I mentioned that the Constitution had anticipated that elected officials would be impeached. Now, the grounds would be very varied, and we have seen governors facing impeachment processes. Some of them get impeached, some of them get absolved, based on the grounds of impeachment that are presented. But impeachment is constitutional. It is exercised and practiced world over, and I don't think there are any grounds of abusing that process, other than, of course, coming up with fake propaganda that then necessitates the process that really doesn't consider the impeachment grounds quite grounded to be able to favor the impeachment process. But I think it is okay for any Kenyan to seek to impeach anyone. That is why Kenyans are also asked to recall the elected officials. So it is a process that is open, and it's a process that can be tried and tested. And especially for our case as Kenya, because this is the first time I think a deputy president is going to be tried through rather the impeachment process of a DP is going to be tried based on what is presented. But again, as we still continue to wait, we wait to see. So the response I wanted to make is basically to look at how we elect our leaders. And I still go back to the point at which you agree for a running mate. And for Kenya Kwanza, it was quite a very, I would call it very closed process and only open to a few people. Because even those who say that they were there, I hear there were not more than 13 people that actually agreed on the person whose name was going to appear on the ballot. Didn't they know about that person? Didn't they know about Mheshimiwa Rigathi Gachagua? Is it that now the gentleman is coming up and is opening up those closed bins and they're now beginning to see? Does that present a proper opportunity for an impeachment process against the deputy president? Do the grounds stand strong and still to be able to guarantee a successful impeachment? Whether yes or no, actually the beauty of it is that we are strengthening our governance processes. And it's not very unique and new because, as I said again, governors have been impeached and we have tried that process for the governors. For a seat or an office like the deputy president, it will be able to provide us with an opportunity to look at, one, how does the president agree or determine who becomes his or her deputy? Number two, what is the space of the political party? For example, UDA. Did the officials agree that among the millions of Kenyans who are our members of UDA, Rigathi Gachagua is going to be the person we present as a deputy president? Did the instruments of the political party, safeguard Rigathi Gachagua as a deputy president? As at the point when they were agreeing, what does the political party feel about the impeachment process? Because that really is the process of electing an official, either as an independent candidate or a political party candidate. And that if you decide to go through the political party process, then the political party really becomes your person. Because even when you are seeking as president and deputy to the presidency, so the executive, to present your motions to parliament, the majority leader is not a foreigner. Is a person who actually belongs to that political party. So what is their feeling about the accusations and indeed the impeachment process? So that we therefore say, what lessons can we learn as a country to be able to determine how we do our elections, conduct them, and actually see a successful term of government? Because it also disturbs a number of us to imagine that for 10 years, despite the fact that we are saying that President Uhuru Kenyatta and Ruto's issues began 2 years into the end of the 10-year term, but must it be like that? That the president and his deputy cannot see eye to eye? Just a minute. Must it be that governors and their deputies, because even as we are speaking here, there are governors who don't sit with their deputies. Must it be like that? Did we go wrong, therefore, to decide that for you to run for president, you must come with as a pair, and that you must sign this document, and that all of you, must be a package? Did that particular clause of the Constitution and indeed the Elections Act, mess up the country so that every time we cannot successfully, seemingly seal off an election and say, kura siasa imeisha, tufanye kazi? Okay. Because those are some of the lessons, I think, that we could learn from this kind of issues.
Yeah, but two fundamental points based on what you've said. The choice of a running mate is a solo and exclusive decision of the main candidates, whether it's a presidential or for governor. So there's no structure ordained in the Constitution or an Act of Parliament that you must do this consultation. It's at your pleasure. So if you decide to go home while you're having coffee and you ask your wife, who do you think should be my running mate? Your wife says X, that becomes the running mate.
You know that
but
that is not how
unfortunately,
it is this month. You actually know that that is not what it is. But it's okay. You have your say.
Yeah. but for these other candidates,
as I look for the Elections Act, but
they sit down. They sit down and ask themselves, who is going to assist me win? So in a good party, it's because of numbers. They're looking for numbers. But the tragedy is that a number of the people who become running mates, they consider themselves to be, for lack of a better word, co-principals. You see yourself as a co-governor, and you see yourself as a co-president. Now, the moment you see yourself as a co-president or a co-governor, and you have no strategic political patience, then it means you will want to upset the table. And you know, these people should read the 48 rules of power. They'll never outshine your boss. If they can only decide to be patient for maybe 5 years or 10 years, then we are not going to be having all these issues. You recall that President Moi, when he served as a vice president, he was humiliated times above number. And he did not respond. He remained cool. He ended up being president for 24 years. So we need our leaders to exercise that. Or maybe when Kevin Osido and company push for constitutional review, maybe we should come for a position. Or rather, we should ask ourselves whether indeed we need running mates, so that we give a governor and the president a clean slate, so that they can determine who is going to be a deputy president, who is going to be deputy governor. Because today, if the president had capacity to fire the deputy president, Rigathi wouldn't be behaving in this manner. He would be structured. And he said that last night on his interview. He said, nobody can frighten him, nobody can shake him, nobody can give him summons, because he was elected by Kenyans. But you know, he was not elected by Kenyans. He was elected by the president. So these are issues. And in as much as Kevin raises fundamental issue, there must it be this way. It's because of the bad banners of these politicians that it's this way. You are already the deputy president, the second most powerful position in Kenya. Why can't you just be patient? Why can't you respect your boss? But if you're unhappy, why can't you resign?
Okay, yes.
This must, I will continue to remind you that we are in Kenya and that we are talking about Kenyan issues. Remember that our elections are driven by...
You suspect I'm in the US.
You speak like you're actually in the US, because even some of the examples you are giving us are American and they are from Nigeria. So I'm wondering actually whether...
But President, where is President Moi from?
That the manner in which you agree at who becomes your co-principal, your co-deputy.
You see, you're also making the same mistake. Co-principal, co-deputy, not your running mate.
It is a package deal, right?
It is.
Yeah, but you know, in my mother tongue we say Kandayamoko or Jolwedo.
Yeah.
You are an assistant. You are not a co.
Only that, in the electoral terms, it is called the running mate.
Yes.
Yeah? So the IBC expects you that you give us a a pair. In this country, how that agreement is done is based on two things, or maybe three, or at most four.
Okay.
Number one is how many people you can be able to lobby to vote for us to gain power.
The numbers.
The numbers. Number two is based on how much money you have to be able to bankroll a winning campaign. And we know how much the presidential campaign in this country, research has been done, and we know from president to MCA. The third thing is how many people you can be able to mobilize to scare other people, beating them and, men in black and doing all those bad things and disrupt people's rallies. Number four is how impunable you can be, that you abuse people and you feel nothing about it. You have the constitution and you tear it and you say, hata hii karatasi haimanishi chochote. Those are the things that you need to get political power in this country.
Which is a mistake in the
first place. Which is precisely a mistake. And so that the opportunity we have is to correct or to rectify, of which, in my view, this impeachment will not cure that issue. Because even as you were seated here, we're already hearing of the possible running mate, so the possible deputy presidents. And you asked a very good question while you were in some break, and you asked, must this person come from Mount Kenya? Do you remember that question? Those
I was going to ask it again.
Now, the person doesn't have to come from Mount Kenya, but you are asking us, must this person come from?
Gentlemen,
it's because of the mistakes that...
Let me just bring in Bichachi. Bichachi, after everything is all said and done, was Governor James Orengo right to say, the government, it's its own?
Well, government always eats its own, and this is going to be a fact moving forward, given that this particular government has created one of the biggest coalitions, and I'm including Modiem in that coalition, of political parties ever. I think President Ruto has sewn together one of the largest coalitions, post-election coalitions that we've had of in living memory. But I want to correct Dismas that he talks about President Moi's 24 years like it was a good thing. It was not. We need to remember that that was quite a regressive time, not a progressive time. And that brings me now into this conversation right here. Number one, Rigathi Gachagua was selected to be President Ruto's running mate. That needs to remain the same. You cannot be chosen for or given an assistant you've not chosen yourself. It is impossible. If today we gave Osido a PA in his office, or even worse, we arranged for him a marriage, I am sure he'll go home kicking and screaming unless we managed somehow to secure Rihanna for him. That becomes very impossible. So yes, it will remain that no matter what happens, the person who becomes deputy will always be chosen by the person who's running for governor, who's running for president. The issue is not the selection process. The issue number one is the issue of this person. Once they are selected, what do they do? The reason why Kamala Harris can behave the way she did when deputizing Joe Biden, even as he became senile, is because she had a job to go to every day to the Senate. Now, you cannot create a job whose main function is having tea in Karen and talking about tea and coffee only the entire time and expect that person to be busy. The other issue cannot also be that this person cannot gather votes. This person should be able to gather votes. That's what Tim Walz is doing today in the United States. And I use the United States as an example because our presidential system mirrors that system. It is not a system where you get to hire and fire a deputy president. And let's remember, the Constitution hoped to cure a disease that Kenya had, where we would stay months without end, without a vice president. And remember, President Moi used to leave the country and we don't have a vice president. Those are dangerous things for a country to go through. That does not mean, given that the position of a deputy president is important, that deputy presidents should now run amok with their speech, run amok with how they dress, run amok with how they talk, run amok with how they buy properties, run amok with disrespecting the president. Absolutely not. We need to create decorum, respect, and honor to that particular office. We may not like the current owner, but in future we will have other people there, and we need to set a standard by which I can face my children and say, this is what it means to be a deputy president of the Republic of Kenya, and this is the weight that it carries. The games that we have played, and I include the games that we played during the second half of President Uhuru Kenyatta's term, is we need to get to a point where we sanitize our politics, and not sanitize them of people, sanitize them of corruption, sanitize them of goonish behavior, sanitize them, and I hope this happens, from the kind of people who harassed that blogger in Mombasa. Shame on them. May they face the consequences of their actions, and sanitize them of this goonish behavior. We need to get to a point where someone who is considered a political leader in Kenya is someone who inspires us, someone who makes us want to be like him, not people who make us sweat because we are hoping that our kids don't see them because they behave horribly, terribly, and embarrassingly.
Okay, I know you want to respond, gentlemen, but let's just take a short break and then we'll come back and continue this discussion.
Hii Septemba endelea kufurahia na Star